Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Body Positive Events. Today's guest is Christina Marie. Christina, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
For sure. So, Christina, we're just going to jump into what I like to call the conversational warm-up questions. I've got 4 questions for you, and the first one is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm definitely more of an early riser, but let myself sleep in on the weekends type of person. How I start my day, no matter what, no matter how late I was up the night before, what I have going on in my life, what I have going on in my day, I always start with talking to myself positively, coming up with positive mantras. I think of 5 to 7 of the best qualities about me, and I say, I am friendly, I am caring, I am kind, I am a hard worker, whatever those qualities are. Sometimes they change. But having those mantras in place before I go out and tackle my day will help me when I make a mistake or when I forget something or when things come up in life like they inevitably do to challenge my self-beliefs. If I have those to start the day, no matter what, I'll be able to figure out whatever life throws at me.
Okay, perfect. Now, outside of like the positive self-talk and the mantras, is there like any type of journaling? Is there any type of gratitude? Is there any like movement, anything like that on top of the positive self-talk?
I would say having gratitude definitely for where I am comes into play. I would probably go with after saying those words and really taking a moment to be present in my body, self-aware, not trying to rush into the future, not reflecting on the past, just being like, hey, I'm here, I'm in this moment, there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing I need to change, let's embrace and start the day off on the right foot. Coffee helps after that.
For sure. Coffee helps a lot of people, right? Yes. I love it. So very simple, but very intentional, and that's very powerful. The second question that I have for you, and for the next 3, if there's more than one, please feel free to share. So this next one, if there's more than one, just throw it out there for us. But do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Yes, I would say there are 2. The first one has been my personal favorite since high school. I think most people, when they meet me, would think, oh, you read like self-help books or you read like girly books, fashion, those sorts of things, because I do enjoy those. But A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I love the idea of transformation, resurrection, and how the protagonist, through honestly questioning himself and his life and trying to work on himself and his purpose, is able to add to the betterment of society as a whole, and again, offer the hope and the idea of transformation and resurrection. Those are themes that have come up for me constantly in my life. I also really enjoy fiction a lot.
Awesome, okay.
And the second book, which is something I've been recommending to a lot of people I work with, even my really good friends, is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's an incredible story of how you set yourself off on this life path and you think you know where you're going, and you may think you even know what you want or who you're going to be, but life throws curveballs at you or things change and evolve, and sometimes all you can do is just surrender and watch how amazing and magical it can be when you let go and believe that things are going to go in the right direction, and you don't always have control over where or what that direction's going to be.
Awesome. All right, so the next question, and you've kind of already talked about, you know, how you start your day with the mantras and things like that. So the next question is favorite quote, mantra, or word. Now, you can kind of like maybe share in this present season of life, or you can kind of take this and share something from a previous, so present or previous season of life, however you want to take that. Christina, favorite quote, mantra, or word?
My favorite mantra for this season in my life, and it's something that I started and built my entire company on, was the phrase, all love starts with self-love. If I can love and embrace exactly who I am in this moment, knowing that there are plenty of things I may need to change or that I could change about me, I can love myself into being the very best version of who I am. I can create a life that I love jobs that I love, relationships that I love, if I'm caring for me and believing in the best parts about me, even when my life or perhaps the feelings I have towards myself challenge that at times.
Cool. Now, in regards to just like maybe a specific word, I know as we were stepping into 2020, a lot of people were kind of like putting on their Instagram stories, like, what's your word for 2020? Or people were kind of sharing their word. Do you have like one specific word that you've really been meditating on for 2020?
I would say it's the word that came to me first was resolve. I resolved to be my most authentic self. I resolve to stick to growing personally as well as professionally, and I have a strong desire to resolve to embrace all parts of who I am, for better or for worse. I want to know all of me. I want to put the truth out there and help other people through my events.
Beautiful. All right, the last question, Christina, is do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast?
I would say my favorite podcast is produced by Fit, Fat, and All That.
There we go.
Influencer.
Yep.
I love her very much. She's definitely inspired me to the point where I'm sitting here talking to you today. Her real name being Julia, but her insight to eating disorder awareness, to body positivity, and to self-help have been incredibly eye-opening for me in my own business, and I really admire her about how truthful she is on her own journey, because I feel like being able to inspire people through the truth is one of the bravest things you could do with your life. I, again, really love her, and I feel like I can relate to a lot of her words, and even though we come from different backgrounds, we've had different struggles when it comes to body positivity, a lot of her messaging just makes it all sound like we are the same. We might be different people, but how we can help other people and how we can help ourselves is the same. I love her message of unity, for sure.
Cool. Shout out to you, Julia.
Yay.
Julia is a previous podcast guest on the 127 Fit podcast. I don't know which number it is, but you can, Julia Parzik, you can scroll down and find her episode. She is definitely a very beautiful and powerful spirit, and her Instagram is at Fit, Fat, and All That. So, all right, Christina, we're going to just kind of like jump into just the fullness of your story now. If you don't mind sharing with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners where you grew up, kind of what were what were those younger years like for you, and then we'll just kind of continue to move on from there.
Yeah, so my background, I came from quite far away from Colorado. I'm from Massachusetts. Originally, I grew up on Cape Cod. I was actually sharing with someone in a meeting this morning how hard it is for me to sort of share with someone who's from Denver, Colorado, how different the East Coast is, because here people are very laid back. The quality of life and the pace here is a little bit slower. The East Coast, everything moves very, very fast. A lot of the people generally, as much as I love Massachusetts where I'm from, some of the people are kind of cold. There's not as much, I think, openness or warmth and the ability to be yourself, at least in the town I grew up in. I came from a town where everything is pretty much image oriented. It's more important about the kind of car you drive, where you live, and what you look like than how you're actually feeling. And I do believe that's where my early struggles with body image and self-esteem began, because I remember even being afraid to show any kind of imperfection or tell my family how I was being bullied when I was growing up. I've always been that awkward and kind of weird person. The only difference is these days I'm able to embrace that part of me. Back then, you know, I felt like being different or being shunned, especially early on in grade school and middle school, was sort of shunned or rejected. I didn't like myself for a really long time, and I always felt like the perfectionistic tendencies that I had, I was never going to measure up or be good enough for anyone, let alone myself. And when I was in 6th and 7th grade, I developed anorexia, and I went into treatment for the first time. And from that point on, my life for the next 10 years was a little bit of a rough road until I moved to Colorado, I would say.
Okay, so what was your relationship like with the adults in your life? Like, was your mom and your dad both in the picture, or were you bouncing back from maybe a dad's house, mom's house? What was kind of like the family dynamics and sense of your mom and your dad, and then did you or do you have any siblings?
I was going to say, so in regard to my parents, they stayed together until I was about 16. So about
Okay.
halfway through my eating disorder struggle, my parents did split up. My relationship to my parents, I felt, was a little bit conditional in the sense that if I was performing well, getting good grades, looking good, acting like everything was fine, I feel like I received more love and attention and praise versus when I would, quote unquote, fail in their eyes or not meet the expectations, I was met with punishment, words of discouragement, because in my family they wanted all of us to succeed. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. I tried really hard to be who they wanted me to be, but as I mentioned early on, I kind of observed these qualities about myself where I had the insecurity, the awkwardness. I just was never really fitting right. And having 2 younger siblings who they had the same pressures as I did in a lot of ways. They didn't go down the same road as I did as far as the body image issues are concerned, but they also didn't have the one thing that I did, which was the pressure of being the oldest sibling as well, trying to set an example, but also being a role model. Again, a lot of this pressure, I may have felt like I didn't measure up to family standards, but I also put a lot of that on myself at such an early age that sort of, again, developed those issues where it got so bad for me that I did have to go to eating disorder treatment centers, and where I couldn't function in regular life because of my own perfectionism and my own need to have a safe space to openly address mental health and to be honest that I needed help and I needed someone to maybe even just ask me if I was okay.
Now, I want to touch a little bit more on kind of like this pressure that you felt. So, like in regards to like your parents, you know, did they verbalize like their desire for you to get like good grades and to perform a certain way? Excuse me. Or was it more just kind of like kind of like a quiet expectation that you felt from your parents?
I would say it was definitely put out there, especially because I went to private school for most of my life. I ended up going to a Catholic school at one point and then switching over to a Christian school. But my parents were paying a lot in tuition to have myself and my siblings there. They wanted us, I feel, to be in a certain standard as far as our image was concerned in the community, and they kind of wanted all of us to fall in line. They mentioned the importance of grades, intelligence, being able to go to a good school. They wanted all of us to be able to have a family, have a good home, model the lifestyle that they were living. But my issue with it was I felt boxed in by that, and I felt that those words were interpreted to me as pressure and expectations, when I'm sure that's not the entirety of what they meant by what they said. I just took that as I don't fit these certain qualities or characteristics, or I'm trying really hard, but it's almost like I was afraid to fail. And the biggest problem with that is when you're afraid to fail, failure is a part of life for everybody. The most successful people have often failed their way to success. So, you know, I think I was more unsure of myself at that time with all these issues developing really young when I was still figuring out who I was. I think things would have been a little different for me if I realized failure is okay and it's expected sometimes when you're trying new things or when you're trying to be the best version of yourself and growing up.
Yeah. How's your relationship with your parents like presently?
So with my parents, I kind of decided to go a different route than what they wanted for me. You kind of have to honestly evaluate yourself and your life when you spend hours, days, and months either in a mental institution or an eating disorder facility. And you have a lot of free time on your hands to not only wonder how the heck you got into a place like that in the first place, but what are you holding yourself back from? You know, being in that confinement of those hospital walls, I think, was the perfect metaphor for how I've been feeling outside of there. When I go home, my walls weren't physical, but I felt like I was boxed in around me all of the time. And I had to think, like, how can I break out of this? How can I create meaning from this struggle that I held on to for a very long time? And I evaluated what I really wanted, and what I wanted was to try something new. So instead of going to a fancy four-year university like my other siblings did, which is incredible and amazing for them, I decided to go to Cape Cod Community College. I got an accelerated associate's degree for free. I have no college debt because I got good grades in high school and I got to go there. They paid for all my books. I was able to sign up for a lot of psychology classes because that's what I was interested in at the time, and that's what I have a degree in, actually. And what was cool about that experience is that I have to applaud Cape Cod Community College for. All of the professors who taught at those prestigious universities in Boston would retire on Cape Cod and they would teach here.
Okay.
So you got some of the best education in the state if you were on Cape Cod and decided to do that and wanted your degree really fast for free.
Cool.
And I was able to graduate sooner and then move to Colorado and kind of start over fresh and give myself a second chance to explore a new place, explore perhaps creating a new identity for myself and meeting new people. I decided after treatment I wanted to create a new experience, and I decided to move here because some people in my hometown lived in Denver and they said that they loved it and they looked like they were having the best time. So they offered to let me be their roommate for a summer to see if I really liked it. I moved here back in 2015 and I stayed. I've been here now for 5 or 6 years and I've never looked back.
Cool. Okay. So I want to talk about the eating disorder. You know, you mentioned that you started to have this eating disorder at a pretty young age, right? And it was anorexia, and then you've alluded to it being like hospitalized and things like that. I'd really just like you, Christina, to just kind of expound more on kind of that experience, because I know there's going to be people that are listening to your episode, listening to your story, and there may be just getting out of an eating disorder, or they're kind of in that recovery stage, or maybe they're actually in a hospital like you were, right? And your story, your kind of journey of anorexia and making it through that is going to powerfully and positively impact them. So just talk a little bit about how you kind of developed anorexia, and then kind of what was your personal experience living through that.
So it started out for me as I wanted something to control, and you will hear that a lot in the eating disorder community when people talk about why they developed their eating disorder. Things in their life felt very out of control. Food and body was something I felt I could control. And there was a girl who, as I mentioned, I was growing up, I was bullied for being a little bit different. She called me fat and ugly, and I remember that's something that really stuck with me. It was during a school play, but it's almost as if I was looking for all of these things that were wrong with me and trying to pinpoint the one thing I could do to fix it. And after I heard that from her, I kind of got this thought in my head. I'm like, well, I've been made fun of for most of my life, and I feel like I'm always falling short even with my family. Maybe it's because I'm physically unattractive and no one is saying anything. And in the course of one summer, I lost close to, half my body weight. I made up a determination in my head I wasn't going to eat and that I needed something to control. And when that happened, things sort of escalated really quickly for me. Nobody really was openly saying anything or asking me questions, but I looked incredibly different in 3 months when I went back to my private school at the time than when I had at the beginning. I had always not really struggled with weight. I had been healthy. Whenever I had a physical, they always said I was reaching my weight goal, growth goal as far as my height, things like that. And it wasn't long after that where I kind of hit my rock bottom, I would say. From what I can remember, it would be classified as the worst day of my life. I was laying in my bed. I hadn't moved in 3 days. I just hadn't eaten anything, wasn't drinking any water, and my parents had to come in my room and physically pick me up out of bed because anytime I tried to stand up, I would just see stars and black out. I remember trying to walk down the stairs and I couldn't even do that. It had gotten to the point where I had lost that much weight. I had completely lost myself in that mental illness, and they took me to Boston Children's Hospital where I almost had a heart attack. My heart pretty much stopped.
Wow.
And I was in the emergency room for 6 to 8 hours. They're like, we have an 11-year-old who needs mental and physical help. I think that's the also difficult part about having an eating disorder. For something that's mentally taxing, it's as equally taxing on your body, no matter what kind of eating disorder that you have. And when I got there, you know, they're like, we have this young child, we don't really know where to put her. And they ended up putting me in the psych ward. And I remember I was laying on a mattress on the floor because they didn't have a bed ready for me. Nobody knew it was going to come to that, where it was an emergency crisis situation. And I remember laying there and I'm like, I never felt more alone in my whole life. But also, on almost like a weirder note, I never felt more real and authentic. And it's because I had never had the ability to really talk to people about how I was feeling. And even though that was my lowest point, I'm like, this is the most honest I've ever been with myself. Everyone in the world can see it. And I almost felt this like strange relief. I knew I was sick. I knew I was unhealthy in body and mind. But I'm like, at least the world finally knows now that perhaps this isn't the real Christina, but this is a very real part of me that I hid for such a long time from family and friends, the self-hate. And the only way the truth could come out at that point for me without the coping skills and positive self-talk was through harming my body. But I feel that way, you know, in some things. Mental illness is an expression of truth, of self, a part of you that has pain. And the truth about all of us has to come out in our lives. And if you're not able to speak that truth, sometimes your body will for you. And that was sort of where my struggle began. I went into treatment multiple times. I was definitely the type of person where they thought I was incurable, has the feeding tube in my nose, kind of almost scares you because you're like, I can't believe people hit that point with themselves. I was there. I was living it. I would go into treatment, gain weight physically, lie my way through therapy so that I could get back out and not have someone trying to control my food again. I could engage in all of the same behaviors. It was very hard to keep up with an eating disorder. And when I look back on it now, seeing that part of me and having to lie about who I was, lie to people that I love, still be in denial that I had an eating disorder even when I'd be going into treatment, was really difficult on my friends and family. And that's something that I still have to live with, that again, like, I was that person. I was so addicted. I just couldn't stop my behavior until I went into treatment. This is probably like the fourth or the fifth time where I would gain weight, lose weight, and the doctors were getting kind of fed up with it. And I was in a treatment center in Boston, and it was called Klarman. It was an all-girls eating disorder unit where you live there, and they kind of weigh out not just how much weight you gain if you're ready to leave treatment, but how you're doing mentally. And it's a bit more extensive, where with other hospital stays, I was kind of like, well, I can lie my way through this and get out of this and then go back to living my eating disordered life. In there, they made you question things more, and they did more in-depth analysis with their psychotherapists, psychologists, things like that. And I was, again, most times where I've hit rock bottom in my life, I'll just be laying in bed being like, how the hell did I get here? It was one of those similar things, staring at the ceiling tiles, and I'm like, I've talked to 6 other women today where they say that they've been to Klarman. This is their, like, 5th time. One girl literally said it was her 10th time. She was like twice my age, but she's like, I've just been in and out of these treatment centers, and she's like, this is my life. At some point, you have to ask yourself if what you're doing to harm yourself physically and mentally is really worth all of that. I had no idea what my recovery was going to look like. I was so afraid of getting fat. I was so afraid of being the negative things that my eating disorder told me I was. Like, in my head, hearing the unworthiness every day, hearing that I'll never be good enough, even some of those things I've been hearing for most of my life. I'm like, well, what if I choose recovery and I'm still not the person I want to be? That's like a scary thought. But I definitely could honestly sit in that treatment center and say, I'm like, well, I tried to hide how I was feeling for a long time, and that didn't work. I'm sitting here and I'm almost like too authentic and kind of scaring myself and everyone else with how sick I am, and this still isn't who I want to be. What's on the other side of me actually embracing who I am and getting better from this whole mess that's been my life? And it's almost like that day I made a decision in my head. It's never that simple, but I told myself I have to at least try. All the bad thoughts in my head, everything that I'm worried about with food, I just got to give this a shot. And I really committed to my last few months of being in that treatment center. I reached all my goals very quickly. I shared with my treatment team at that time I was very scared to gain weight and of all the other things associated with it, how I could maintain my health on the outside of the hospital. But I just really put in my head the positive mantra of like, I have to give this thing called recovery a try, or I'll never have the quality of life that I want. Because besides having all of that time on your hands when you're in treatment, you also start thinking about not just how much you're hurting and how much you're hurting the other people around you, but what you actually want. I'm like, do I want to travel? Do I want to try to live somewhere else? Do I want to perhaps be more confident in who I am? And when I go to college, maybe try to be a little more outgoing instead of being so shy and afraid of myself.
So when you're going through this experience, Christina, what was like and you kind of mentioned like you're kind of laying there staring at the ceiling tiles and you're kind of like processing things and talking to yourself. Is there like an absolute point where you can kind of look back and say that is the moment that I quote unquote changed and started to move in that powerful recovery direction?
I do believe it was truly that night when I was in Klarman, because every point after that I kind of realized it's almost like you're able to make a pros and cons list in your head, but instead of just making the list, you actually start to try living by all of the cons of your eating disorder. Like pros of having anorexia or being anorexic versus the cons. And it's almost like in the beginning, there were a lot of pros for me because obviously people don't keep doing something over time as a negative habit or pattern unless it's serving them in some way, shape, or form. I had to get really honest about how the eating disorder was serving me. Anorexia allowed me to not have to feel anything. You can numb out everything if you have an eating disorder. And there's nothing more numbing but truthful when you're over that toilet or you're hurting yourself and not eating, that you can say, I have control, but I feel so empty, but at least I don't have to feel that. And that's how I felt in the beginning. I'm like, well, I can control my body. I don't have to take on the responsibility of having to feel things. I can look a certain way, and living by these old mantras or these old phrases in my head of somehow, if I'm thin, I can be happy. If I'm thin, I can have control. But it's almost like every day after that, because when you live long-term or short-term in a treatment center, everything's controlled for you. They tell you when you can eat. They tell you when you can go to the bathroom. They tell you what groups you have to go to. And you maybe get 1 or 2 times throughout an entire week, besides when you're sleeping, where you're allowed to have like free time. They really try to, and I think most of it can be really beneficial to keep you staying busy, but I'm like, how? And then, once I had all the pros of the eating disorder, all of a sudden, as weeks went on, before I left that treatment center, the cons list, I only started with like 2 or 3 things, and I showed them to my therapist. I'm like, well, I'm hurting my family, I'm hurting myself, and I know long-term what I'm doing is hurting me physically. That list started to grow longer and longer. Like, I can't eat when I want to, I can't try new things, I can't go on an adventure, I can't travel, I'm not confident enough to be in a romantic relationship with somebody, I don't get to meet new friends. And by the time I left there, the cons list was just so much larger than the pros. I had it in my head originally, but when I wrote it down and journaled, I did a lot of journaling when I was in treatment. It's helpful even now when I look back and I share my story on podcasts or wherever else I do, to remember at one point in time, I was that person.
Yeah.
And that's a very real part of me. But it's helped to make me who I am, and I'm completely different in many ways now, and I love myself so much more, and I love to eat, which is amazing that I got to that place. But again, it took me really going from, oh, there's all these pros to having anorexia, to realizing there were like 5 pros at the time, but the cons list of everything I was actually missing out on was so much longer than that. So having something, again, that you can reflect and go back to, when I would leave treatment and I'd be sitting there eating breakfast in the morning and I'd hear the negative self-talk in my brain that's been ingrained there from my eating disorder telling me all the bad things food is going to do for me, you start remembering why you want to recover in the first place and why you made that list in your brain to be like, I understand the eating disorder is comfortable and I understand what these thoughts in your mind are telling you will happen. But my biggest testimony to people is sharing everything I thought would happen to me from being in recovery never happened. My life became more beautiful, more abundant. I actually like the reflection of the person I see in the mirror now. None of the fearful things I was worried about came true, only bigger and better things.
So would you say for somebody, whether it's an eating disorder, maybe it's alcoholism, somebody that's just struggling with an addiction or a mental illness, would you really say, Christina, that, beginning to kind of take, the pros and the cons of kind of like where they're at and that addiction or that mental illness, is that something you would really encourage people in those situations in life to do?
I think it can be a little hard. I think as far as tough love goes, you do have to accept your responsibility in it. I did have a mental illness. I never asked to have an eating disorder, but at some point in time I had to say, what is this negative behavior and self-harming behavior doing to me and to other people? And there are going to be feelings of shame and worthlessness that come in when you stop numbing out. But what's more important is the person you can be, the life you can lead, and the love that you have to give to yourself and other people by having those lists. So I think you have to remember there are going to be lows when you make the decision in your mind to be honest and truthful with yourself. But without doing that, the only alternative is to keep going the way you're going. And how helpful has that really been for you?
Right.
Asking yourself the honest question and having those fears, that's going to be a part of the recovery process. But you have to go through it. The only way out is through.
Powerful. Okay, now I want to, so at kind of what age did you feel like you were fully set free or you had fully broken through anorexia?
I felt this beautiful, sweet release from the entire trauma as far as when I know I've been putting in the work. I'm comfortable eating, whether it's at home or out and around other people. Food is a part of my life, but unless I'm like really hungry or really excited, it's not something where I'm worried about it regarding weight. Was on my 23rd birthday.
Okay.
They call that a golden year birthday because I turned 23 on July 23rd.
Awesome.
I remember I went with a group of friends to City O City, a really good place in Cap Hill, for lunch, and it was there on my birthday. I just felt this sense of peace and relief. I'm like, wow, I've worked a really long time to get here, but I'm not wearing makeup anymore because I don't like how my face looks. I'm not working out because I need to be skinny and my life's not going to be okay if I'm not. I'm just at this place where I'm comfortably uncomfortable with my body and myself, but that's so much better than how or who I used to be, and I know everybody can get here. I know it seems impossible. I think that's the biggest thing too you'll find in eating disorder treatment in that whole world. There are some people who, if they go through it so many times, they're deemed as unredeemable or unable to truly ever be helped. I've been there and I've been one of those people, so I know how to help them get out of it. I know that that is not true, and that no matter how far gone you think you are, there's always hope, and there's so much abundance waiting there for you. Again, on the other side of fear was everything I ever wanted. I really felt it that day. The sun was shining. I couldn't believe the friends around me who were so positive and so supportive and who I could be honest with. And I was really glad that I was able to share myself and even share that with them as we were all eating. I'm like, I'm just really thankful for all of you being here, and I'm thankful for myself and giving up on what was clearly not working for me and giving into the very best life that was available for me. That's
awesome. So just now that you enjoy food and it's such a beautiful part of your life, what if there was one food that you could eat every day without gaining weight, without anything like any negative or whatever, right? What would that food be?
I've thought about this because I'm like, well, if the world ever came to an end or zombie apocalypse happened, food shortage, I really thought this through, but I'm like, I would say in a cheesy sense, literally and figuratively, pizza. Because I love Italian food, but I thought about this over and over because I'm like, would it really ever get that old to you? Like, you can try different kinds. You can have cold pizza. You can have hot pizza. I'm like, I feel like I would never get tired of it. And
There
you
you
can try
go.
so many different kinds. Like, some people might be like, oh, just like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm like, well, sorry, you can like change up the bread, but it's gonna be peanut butter and jelly forever.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about pizza. And I love that because pizza was my favorite food throughout most of my childhood. Then for 5 or 6 years, just really, I was in that place where I hit the midway point before I felt it was okay to eat my favorite foods again, to eat desserts again. But I can finally go back to like loving and enjoying pizza. And I would definitely say, in a cheesy, again, another cheesy metaphor, but like, I love being a Denver foodie. So now I can go out of my way to try new types of pizzas, and I genuinely love it.
Cool. What's your favorite spot in Denver for pizza then?
Ooh, oh my gosh, this is a little bit hard. I was gonna say, so my favorite place in general, I would say, is Barolo Grill for their Italian food. I love their pizzas there, but North is really good too. Both of those are in the Cherry Creek area.
Sweet.
That's a really cool spot where there's a lot of friendly people, and I love the atmosphere as well. But those are my pizza spots, and I love pizza and ranch. Love pizza and ranch.
Ranch is good. Yeah, that's some good stuff. All right, now I want to kind of touch on, and you and I met yesterday, and we had an awesome conversation outside of the whole podcast thing here. And one of the things that we touched on a little bit, Christina, was mindset. So I just kind of want you to share a little bit in regards to the importance of mindset, not only in recovery but also just in life. I mean, you're stepping out and doing some very powerful things, entrepreneurship and things like that. So just touch on the importance for us human beings to kind of be in control of our mind, be in control of our thoughts, and how that kind of plays or ties into the rest of our lives and how we show up each day.
Well, I do feel strongly the way that you feel about yourself is literally everything. So your day could go completely south or sideways, but if you don't love yourself, like yourself, embrace and know all parts of who you are, you're going to shame yourself, you're going to get caught up. For me, with having the perfectionist mindset, I'm going to go back and like be reeling in my mind of how I'm just the worst type of person. Where if you have positive or unconditional self-love and regarding yourself in that way, you can go throughout your day and you have mantras or phrases you can go back to, which is why I start that out specifically in the morning. And it's not like I live in this self-love or like this cloud of fantasy where nothing else is real besides that. No, like self-love is there, but like life is hard, relationships are challenging, and when you're a business owner, it's almost like you're learning something new every day sometimes. But being able to have those things in the back of your mind that are the best qualities about you, and knowing what you bring to the table, even if other people don't see that, you know that you do. And you know that if you go into something, whether it's like a personal relationship or professional relationship, and you don't show up 100% in the way you would have liked to, if you can go back to, for me, my mantra of, I know I am a hard worker, and that's one of the qualities I love about myself, I'll go back tomorrow and I'll come back even stronger. Or if that person doesn't like me or doesn't like what I have to offer, I'm more than willing to give it another shot or try again with them or someone else. Having that mentality is really important, not in a savage sense, but I do believe, especially in the Denver dating scene, especially in the professional world, of thank you next. If somebody really doesn't like or appreciate the qualities that you put out there, there's someone else that will. And knowing that too, because it can be really discouraging, especially as a business owner where I've only been in business for about 1.5 years, having people reject you or your ideas, or having people not understand you. It can be very similar to like personal relationships or dating or friendship, where you can feel those heavy emotions of rejection or start to question your self-worth. But just know, like, if these are the very best qualities about you, that will shine through when you need it to. And it's all about that self-talk. Again, if I didn't say these things to me every day and really build myself up on that and attempt to manifest and attract more of that in my life, I would attract more of the same things that I've been looking to get out of my life, like toxic relationships or toxic behavior patterns. Those will keep coming back in. But now I see those things more not as challenges to my growth, but something that should accompany my growth. And it's healthy to have contrast, or it's healthy to have not everything in life go 100% right all the time. It's been said in the business world that things are supposed to be linear, or, you know, people think things are supposed to go one way, where sometimes I'm like, no, like there's days where you feel really good about yourself, there's days where you don't, but again, it's all about what you're saying to yourself and how you show up for yourself in the midst of that.
And as we feed ourselves these positive thoughts, these mantras and things like that, that's really how we retrain our brain, right? And that's how we, you know, can really move towards being our most powerful and productive self. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and as far as for my business being called Christina Marie's mantra, it's having those healthy phrases to yourself where all of a sudden, for instance, something we were talking about yesterday, that can take a person who's struggling in their workout routines or struggling with eating. If they, maybe the one thing that they're missing is the kindness towards themselves. So all of a sudden, instead of beating themselves up at the gym or beating themselves up in a yoga class, they can start to say, hey, let me try working out because I know there's things I could change about my body, but I can love myself and see my positive qualities and strengths in this pose or in this workout routine. And viewing food in the same way, almost, again, something I was sharing with you yesterday, where instead of using all that energy into making you a really negative person or creating a negative life, because energy is just energy, that same energy can be taken and used into making you the very best positive, happy, healthy version of yourself. You have that power, you have that ability, but if you're telling yourself that you're the worst when you're on that yoga mat or when you're at the gym trying to do reps, or you're telling yourself, I'll never be able to complete this diet, or I'll never be able to eat healthy, I'll never be able to get over this eating disorder, then that's all you're ever going to get if that's how negative you're speaking to yourself.
Okay. Now, what's something kind of like currently, Christina, in your life that you are really having to work through, or something that you're struggling to overcome? Just if you don't mind, because like, you know, that this is the power of storytelling. Like you are, you know, being very real and transparent with your with anorexia and things like that. And there's so much power in us sharing our stories. There's so much power in that vulnerability. So, you know, I just kind of want to, you know, and at points in time, it's like, we look at other people, right? Especially with social media, we look at other people and like, oh, like, you know, that person's got it all together.
Hashtag goals.
Yeah, right. So, you know, everybody's got like, you know, their highlight reels, so to speak, on social media. And that is conditioning our brains to think like, well, if I don't have, you know, this amount of money, or if I don't have this vehicle, if I'm not living in this high-rise apartment, whatever, like I'm not good enough, all this stuff. Like we're all struggling with that. And the reality is, like, you've broken through anorexia and you're doing, again, powerful things, but I know there's still struggles for you. There's still struggles for me. So currently, as we sit here today, January 10th, 2020, what is a struggle or something that you're really having to work through personally?
I would say what I have to work through, because I've reached the place where I definitely feel really good about my eating disorder. I don't struggle with that any longer in the traditional sense. I don't self-harm. I don't restrict anything like that. I just genuinely love myself and food in that new way. But what I'm struggling with right now more, I would say, is personal beliefs about myself. Because the problem with having the negative mantras in your mind for so long and not challenging them, just allowing the negative mantras and thoughts to float around in your mind, they become a part of you. And unfortunately, there's still a part of me that believes some of the negative things that I've been saying to myself over the years, or that my eating disorder told me. And that shows up, to be totally honest with you and transparent, in the areas of my life and my relationships, which is incredibly hard for me. It's hard for me to believe that I am worth it and I am the best in some of my friendships or some of my romantic relationships, which is why I try so hard to always be this person who's positive and healthy and full of wealth and knowledge. And that's a part of me, but I'm also just a human being.
Absolutely.
And I don't, as we were speaking about the permission to fail earlier, I see in my relationships and a little bit in my professional life, but I'm getting much better about it. My relationships especially, for sure, I don't like to fail, and I don't like to give myself permission to make a mistake or to miscommunicate or to date someone that is totally wrong for me. And I'd really like to switch that mindset and some of the beliefs I have on that, being like, hey, it's normal for friends to get into arguments. It's normal for you to realize a couple months when you've been dating someone casually or you've been seeing somebody perhaps exclusively that, oh my God, this may or may not work out, or hey, I thought that person really understood me. They don't understand the issues that I've had in the past that have helped to create who I am today, and they need more understanding on that. I want to know and feel that it's okay to be 100% myself, but to also know that that means you have to show someone all of you. You can't just always be that positive person. You have to be real when you're having a hard day. I think you have to tell people, again, how to overcome bad days, but the only reason you can even tell people how to do that is because you live there in the sadness, in the anger. You live there in the crap for a second, and you allow yourself to feel all the emotions that are associated or what you're having as far as having a bad day with yourself or having a bad day with someone else. And again, that's a part of the human experience, I guess. Long story short, and it's something I feel like I'll be working on for the rest of my life, being a recovering perfectionist, is realizing not only is it okay and perfectly normal to fail at some things, that's a part of the human experience. The human experience does not mean you get to numb out everything bad. It means you integrate the quote unquote good and the bad experiences. They come together and they make what is called wholehearted, beautiful living. It's what makes life worth living, to have both of those areas of my life where there are good things and bad things happening instead of only wishing for sunshine and rainbows, as they say.
I love it. Do you still, just in your day-to-day life, do you still feel a lot of pressure and have to kind of like work through that?
I think I have to now versus like I feel this like suffocating pressure like I used to. When I start to feel a little bit of pressure, tell yourself pressure make diamonds. So I'm like, whatever this is going to help me get what I want out of my life eventually. A little bit of pressure is okay, but a lot of pressure, I have to understand, is usually self-induced. And I've become a more self-aware person over the years, but I'm like, if I'm starting to feel the need to perfect my dating relationship, or I'm starting to feel the need to perfect my friendship or perfect my company, I need to take a step back, go for a hike, go for a yoga class. I need to turn off my phone. I need to step off of social media and step back into me. I think that's what's really helpful, is sometimes not necessarily asking for your thought patterns or your feelings to change, but acknowledging, hey, I actually am getting curious about what this is. This is a pattern that keeps coming up for me. How can I step back, remember my own mantras and self-care and self-love, practice what I'm preaching, and that means taking care of me. So whatever I have to do, whether it's communicate with someone, hey, I need a little bit of time and space today, or turning off my phone and not engaging in social media and being 100% present in my life, that's usually what helps me come back to, hey, these are the positive mantras you've worked so hard to establish in your life. You need, like for me, it's almost like I'm saying it to myself, you need to remember who you are and how far you've come. There's no such thing as perfect days. Take the time to accept whatever's happening and don't try to change it, good or bad.
Cool. All right, so I want to kind of step back into your story specifically.
Yes.
So we kind of left off with you moving out here to Denver. And did you say it was 2015 or 2016?
2015, right after I graduated college.
Okay, so expound a little bit on when you got out here. In 2015, what did the earlier times in Denver look like, and then we'll kind of move along with your evolution story.
I was gonna say, so I feel like most people don't know, because I also pride myself highly as far as fashion goes. Like I love to dress good, look good, and I feel like, especially based on my history where I wouldn't dress for my body and I wouldn't accept myself. Now on that level, I love fashion and I love being able to accept that part of me now and try new things. But when I first moved to Colorado, I didn't even realize I was in for a wild ride, but I was. Like I said, I kind of just moved here on a whim for the summer and have been here ever since.
Yeah.
I had no money, no car, no job, and my very first job was working for a real estate company as a receptionist pretty much. And I'd have to like walk a mile or two to get to the bus, take like 3 buses to get to where I worked. And I kind of just was more silent and quiet and grinding, I would say, for my first 2 years, because like no money, so I'm like, I have to work really hard. I know from my time in treatment and when I started doing a little bit of public speaking as far as volunteer opportunities in Massachusetts, that it's something I wanted to give back to other people with. I found my passion in life, but I'm like, well, I kind of need some money first, even just a little bit.
Of course.
So I was super broke, poor, all that jazz, and I worked my butt off pretty much to the point where I could afford a car, live right outside of downtown Denver, start to have the stability in my personal life to be able to start really questioning my professional life. I knew I did not want to stay in real estate forever, but what inspired me with events is I threw a happy hour for the team I was on at the downtown Denver, Keller Williams. This was about a couple years back, and there were 100 people that showed up to this happy hour.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I did all the work, like all the phone calls every day, emails, marketing material. If I can do this for 100 people and have it be in regard to home sales, imagine if, just a big if, I don't know, I could do this for people who are struggling with mental health or struggling with body image.
Yes.
At that time, I wasn't working in the field yet. I was doing volunteer work for the Eating Disorder Foundation and Mental Health Colorado, but there were all these signs that just gave me that little bit of hope of, maybe I can actually do this, or maybe there's just a chance. Take a chance, life's a gamble anyway, and see what you can do to make this happen. The first event I ever hosted was a Halloween event, and I called it Body Pause, P-A-W-S, Positive Kitten Yoga, and I hosted it for my really good friend Brandon Zavala. He's been on Shark Tank. He throws incredible cat conventions, snow cats, silicats all over the U.S., and he really took a chance on me. I was brand new, but I hosted this event. I found a yoga instructor, and the room was packed. And yes, it was a fun time doing yoga with cats, and there were vets there to make sure the cats are okay. Everyone was having a really good time, even though it was a little bit of a small space. But I shared that message of body positivity, and it felt like I found myself again. Like when I try to share with people what it's like to find your passion and share your story, I feel like it's the equivalent to falling in love, except you fall in love with what you're doing. You fall in love with the strengths that you see in yourself, and as you develop that love for what you're doing and who you are, you give that out to other people. And as I started doing these smaller little kitten events that had the body positive message, and then started expanding to fitness events in Colorado that I would do at apartment complexes downtown with a couple of my sponsors like Onus IV, Hydration, and Revive Colorado, people wanted to come more and more because it wasn't just a fitness class. It wasn't just a yoga class. It was something that addressed mental health that people are usually not too comfortable with sharing about, or people in the community now who I'm meeting in Denver are starting to get more comfortable sharing about, and directly addressing eating disorders, something that's also been more in the past that was taboo. And I feel like as I grew as a person and I took these chances on myself, and I took these chances of putting myself out there in the community with other people, being like, hey, I don't have everything figured out, but I really want to do this thing. It's almost like there's never a right time to like jump or make a leap when you're a business owner, as far as making the decision to get started. So many people can't even get to that point of like, I'm going to start doing this thing, and no matter what happens, my heart is here, I'm in this message, this company, whatever it is, believing in yourself and believing that your message will grow. And that's sort of what happened to me. And as I started evolving on these fitness events, I partnered with other event planners in town who I loved working with, who taught me a lot about the business aspect of it. I created an event with someone else last year called Everything in Balance at the Four Seasons, and that was a health and wellness event with a bunch of different sponsors, fitness classes, again, where I shared my story and brought in some mental health sponsors as well onto the event. All of a sudden, again, what I could do, it went from filling a room and getting kind of small scale or doing it for someone else into, wow, I can do this. I can build something that has meaning to people's lives, and I can teach people how to be body positive. It's just not in a 1-hour fitness class. I discovered very quickly I wanted to educate people in a couple different areas, which sort of leads up to one of my events I wanted to talk about that's happening on February 1st here in Denver at the Native Hotel, that I called Body Mantra, because it's all addressing the mantras, positive or negative, that you might be saying to yourself about your body. And it's a day of education where it has food, fashion, fitness, and feelings. So it's not just working out because you love your body, but it's education in a couple areas as well that can help you learn how to be a more well-rounded person and more accepting of yourself.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you just repeat one more time?
Yes.
And then explain a little bit more, because you touched on body mantra, which is February 1st of this year, 2020. You touched on it a little bit, but just expound a little bit more, because I really want the listeners to be able to, if they're listening to this before February 1st, I want them to be able to participate, buy tickets. So just explain a little bit more. You said it's an educational thing. There's going to be some different things, but just go into a little bit more deeper details for us, Christina, please.
Yes. So Body Mantra is a day event that's centered on health and wellness, physical and mental health. So it's going to have body positive fitness classes, a body positive fashion show. There's going to be food education, and then a panel with all women who are some of the top influencers in Colorado, sharing their experiences and knowledge with you regarding body positivity. To sum it up, it's a day event. I want people to really come and feel educated on self-love in the areas of food, fashion, fitness, and feelings. The event is from 1 to 5 p.m. at the Native Hotel in downtown Denver. There'll be use of the hotel lobby and the downstairs floor. It's going to be decorated with self-love art. It's going to have top influencers who are the best at what they do in the areas of fitness, food, fashion, and feelings. But I'm very excited for this event because, again, I really want to expand. I don't believe for myself I can teach someone how to be body positive in 1 hour, but perhaps in one day, and they might not even hear it from me. They might hear it from one of the speakers or the fitness instructor or one of my sponsors who will be at the event offering free services like B12 shots and booster shots on how it is they can better learn how to love themselves, starting with their body, hence Body Mantra.
Okay, so for some of the listeners that might not understand what body positive is, can you just break that down and explain that for us, please?
I think that being body positive is accepting your body in this moment. So for me, how I practice body positivity in my life every single day is I get up, I look in the mirror, and because, again, I'm a recovering perfectionist, my first instinct, sadly, may always be to look in the mirror and see everything I don't like about me. But what's great is being body positive, that's a part of the journey. You're not going to like yourself consistently every single day, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally. But you're able to say, hey, these are all the things I could change about me or I need to change about me. But I have this one moment, and perhaps even just today, I can show that person in the mirror who's worked so hard to get here, who's gone up and down in their weight, done many different things in my life, for instance. I can love that person now a lot more than I used to. And if I'm able to offer that part of me, the good and the bad, self-love, I can better educate myself on what it means to embody a body positive lifestyle. I can go throughout my day and balance the critical thoughts and the really good thoughts about me. I can acknowledge my body will grow and change as I grow and change physically and mentally, and be able to have a really successful, awesome life, but loving my body, because accepting, like, yes, I may need to gain or lose weight according to my doctor, according to my trainer, but if I don't love myself and I'm trying to shame myself to get there, even when I do reach those results, I'm not going to find the happiness I've been looking for. Self-love adds the happiness component to whatever health need I would say a person could have. So for instance, I guess to better break that down or explain it, if you need to gain or lose weight, if you're not loving yourself on the journey to getting there, you're not going to magically love yourself when you're there, even if it's something that you need for your health.
Right.
I've just found in my own life, and then in the lives of other people that I've worked with or mentored, they might have the weight piece covered per se. They might be in a healthy weight range, or they might be able to meet their goals physically or outwardly of having the body type that they want, or making the money that they want, or having the awesome job in the relationships. But the self-love component is why they feel like they still don't measure up. And that's something that I want to teach people how to have. I think that it's so easy to criticize our bodies because it's the first thing we see when we look in the mirror every day. So even if that's one area you could start in, you might not love all parts of yourself, but you can start with trying to love your body exactly as it is, and then seeing if positive change, getting curious if that can be the byproduct of you learning how to love yourself. Then all of a sudden you're able to take care of yourself more, you're able to show up effectively to your workouts, you're able to show up more mindfully with food, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Very, very well put. When you, what's one or two traits, and this, you again, you can take this however you want. It can be like if you're, looking for somebody in regards to an intimate relationship or friendship, or, somebody maybe you're just connecting with in regards to your events that you want to be a part of your team or sponsorship. But what are one or two traits that you really, really genuinely appreciate in another human being?
I would say, because the first one came to my mind this morning, I met with an incredible woman who inspires me so much with her work ethic and what she's done to get to where she is. And I kind of admired her from afar, but I wanted to get to know her, and I reached out, and she was a little bit late to our meeting. And her first instinct was, of course, to apologize, but she seemed like so worried and all that stuff. I prefer honesty. She told me without too much information why she was a little bit late. Or even if she just took the time to say, hey, I'm going to be running a little late because of my son. I love that. I look for honesty and communication. Those are my top two qualities with anyone I work with, anyone I date, anyone that I am close friends with. Honesty and communication. Some days are not going to be the greatest. Like I mentioned before, not every day is perfect. The whole journey of life and business should never be linear. But the honesty piece is huge for me because I was not honest with myself for so long. When I see that in other people, even when they're honest about their flaws or how they made a mistake or things that could have been done or said differently, I admire that. It takes way more guts to be honest than to put up a front. When you're at a business meeting or on a date and only putting the best things about you out there, I personally kind of like in other people when I see that they're not perfect. It's just that's almost beautiful to me, the humanness of it and the honesty that we can all connect on the fact, thank God we're all allowed to be human.
Right.
Some of the best business meetings of my whole life have been when the person was late. Same was true of today. And the communication, I admire that as well because that's something I didn't embody for so many years of my life. So when I see it in someone else, exactly like the other quality, it's something I can learn how to be better about. And when someone's communicative, that's so attractive to me. They say exactly what they want, exactly what they're looking for, and they talk about their business and say it like it is. I do appreciate that, even if it comes across sometimes as tough love or it comes across as a little brutal. I'm like, hey, the East Coast part of me, I don't really feel like I can relate to a lot of it, but being able to take harshness in, I'm like, yep, that's an East Coast quality I can respect is the honest communication from someone.
Awesome. All right, so there was a quote that I came across when I was, preparing for our conversation today in regards to the podcast on Instagram. It was something that you posted, and the quote says, "Visualize your highest self and start showing up as her." Now, I would like you to just kind of share a little bit in regards to why that quote is important to you, and then after that, I would love it, Christina, if you would just kind of share in regards to like where you want to take the body positive events maybe in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, so visualize your highest self and start showing up as her. So I believe you're doing that personally right now. So explain that quote, but then also like who do you want to be or become in the future in regards to your business and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, and I really feel like that quote, of course, is a reason why I used it on my posts. I do enjoy it, but it's the honest truth that everyone, regardless of gender, should want to be or should try to embody. We can't always look in the mirror and love the person we see staring back at us. Sometimes we go through seasons in our lives where we're literally thrown every single curveball that there could be, and we're still challenged to question who we are. We have to know, as much as there's a part of us that we can deem as unworthy or we can label and say that's a failure, that very same part of us that we're criticizing so harshly is exactly why we are who we are. And if we can love that darkness, per se, that's how you can really start showing up and visualizing yourself as the lightest part of you, or, as they say, the happier version of the part of you you're really comfortable with. I love being in that comfortably uncomfortable place where my highest self is not this perfect enlightened person who has all the answers, who's the perfect business owner, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect whoever. It's just me embracing all of me and feeling and being really strong in that. So what I do every day is I'm like, my future self has these goals. I try to sit there in my brain and I can say, I see her, I know the way that she walks, I know the way that she talks, I know the way she wants to be in business, the way that she dresses, the way she carries herself with her friends and family, the amount of money she has. I get really specific about those things and I put them on a vision board so that when I do meditate, which is something I try to do daily or before or after a yoga class, I can start saying, hey, again, I'm willing to practice what I preach and acknowledge my highest self and all these goals that I want. Some of those things I don't have yet, but like I know it in my heart, I can see it in my mind, and if I can do it on this yoga mat, I can do it in the real world. That's what visualizing your highest self, male, female, whatever gender you identify with, that's what that is knowing you can get yourself into a meditative space, or for me, an exercise space, where I tell myself, I can show up in my life as whoever I want to be if I can do this workout. If I can do this fitness class, if I can get through this meeting, if I can get through this uncomfortable conversation, that's how I will start showing up.
So then I just want you to then kind of just share a little bit, Christina, in terms of like your future in regards to body positive events, and just kind of like you just mentioned that vision board. So kind of what's on that vision board for the future, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road? Like what's that big goal that you are going to accomplish in your future?
The big goal, something that I do and take little steps towards working on every single day. That's the only way you can ever visualize anything big or grand or has meaning and importance to the world and importance to you. In 2 to 5 years, I see myself traveling all over the country, all over the world, doing mantra events for everybody everywhere, where people can gather in a room, no matter how many people, and they're gathered there to learn about self-love and body positivity and mental health. I feel like anybody can fill a room on random topics or fun parties, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do feel that this is how my life has meaning and how I can give back in the way I feel led to as a healer, teaching people how to live and come up with like, what is their body mantra? What are those phrases that you say when you look in the mirror every day that are either about your body or about yourself? And that's how you can embody the best version of you in the world. I want to be writing books, teaching. I want to be doing seminars, podcasts, being on television, and hopefully not alone. I'd love to have other powerful women, because I'm truly all about the empowerment message, standing or sitting on stage with people who inspire the hell out of me, who are making more money than I do, who have the self-love game down even more than I do. That's also what I want to surround myself with in business and in my personal life, that those are the types of people I'll be working with who feel as though this message aligns with them and their brands as well. But I've always sort of seen it as having these huge conferences, and then if there's the best way I can describe it is having it almost be like a self-love party where you're celebrating with other people how open you can be to your mental illness actually helping you in your life, and how accepting you can be of your body and of yourself. That might seem a little broad, but as I look at my vision board and stare at it every day, sometimes specific words, or hey, I'd like to have a book written by February 1st of 2021, things like that come into my mind. And that's where I can center and structure, you know, where I'd like to be with my goals. Other than that, a lot of visual images, travel involved, and being able to, again, give back my heart and my message to people. And to be honest, whatever that looks like, I'm game. I just want to give back at this point. Again, there's never the best time to start anything, but I'm like, hey, I'm just getting started. Who else wants to jump on the body positivity message, and who else wants to build up their business, and who wants to build up their message? Let's partner and collaborate. Part of the main reason why I'm sitting here with you.
Absolutely, yeah. You're gonna help me do some things, and I would love to help you, and I'm definitely gonna be, you know, I'm sharing with my community outside of the podcast, but on my social media about body mantra and things like that. So let's, I want to touch on a little bit. We've been going for almost 70 minutes here, so we're going to start to wrap things up, Christina. But you've mentioned a lot just as you're sharing your story and unpacking things. You've mentioned yoga and kind of fitness and things like that. So I just want you to kind of share a little bit about the importance of movement and exercise in regards to your own personal self-care, and even how that's been a very impactful part of your recovery through anorexia.
It has, and something I actually didn't tell you about yesterday when we met, but it comes up more presently to mind now. So besides the eating disorder, really struggling with that and mental health, I was completely addicted to exercise. But I was over-exercising, being in an extremely malnutrition body, and not doing it from the place of I have any love and self-worth or any redeemable qualities about me. It was just all self-hate. There was even a point where I couldn't exercise because I had to gain weight when I was in treatment, and I was using exercise as a negative tool in an unhealthy weight loss journey. And so that's why something I emphasized to you yesterday about coming from that place of having self-worth and acceptance, because if you're trying to shame yourself over your body size, or you're using exercise as a tool to fuel the negative beliefs about you, anytime you look in the mirror and let's say you do finally lose or gain that weight and you thought all this happiness would come to you, the happiness you find is temporary. My message, my events, and my goal in helping anyone I meet, pretty much, it's not even about the business necessarily at that point. I'm like, I just want to help, is showing you how to use exercise as a tool in positivity. So I was able to go from being the worst example of what a healthy relationship looks like to exercise to getting a really, really good one. Now I exercise almost every day or every other day, but it's different types of movement. It's yoga, it's going to the gym, it's running if I feel like it, it's jogging, it's a walk in the park, but wanting to connect to my body more is my mantra of why I do exercise, mainly. Yes, I want the physical health component that I've worked so hard to have, and I really need to listen to my body when I'm exercising. There are days where my body doesn't want to work out, and that's okay, but realizing, like, for instance, because I'm on the other end of things sometimes where I'm trying to maintain versus I'm not trying to gain or lose weight, so this is from that perspective. If I'm running and I feel a lot of pain, like not just in my head of being like, this sucks or whatever, but I really feel like my legs, weren't stretched out enough. I either need to like stop and stretch my legs and try to run again, or I might just need to not run, except that it's going to be a walking day. I think people can benefit the most from exercise when they try all different forms of it and they incorporate different forms of it into their life. The stretching piece too is huge before you do anything. And if you're gonna have a goal where, like, your doctor says you need to gain or lose weight because period, this has to happen for you, or these bad things will happen, have that in your mind as you're exercising, but also being like, hey, this isn't just an opportunity for my physical health, this is an opportunity to improve my mental health and the relationship I have with myself. Because I'm telling you, like, the day where I looked in the mirror and all of a sudden it was my goal to better connect with my body and myself, it's almost like the weight gain that I needed was a natural byproduct of me taking the time to care about me. And I felt this joy and I felt so satisfied with who I was, versus if I had done it for either only superficial reasons or if I hadn't had the mental health aspect also as a motivator for why the physical and mental health, they should be viewed as equally important.
Cool. All right. So we've had a very thorough conversation.
Yes.
I would just like you, if there's anything that we haven't touched on yet, Christina, or if there's maybe something that is just really burning inside of you that you haven't been able to share yet, I just want you to be able to share kind of some final words, maybe a final message that you have for myself and the listeners.
I was going to say, if you're listening to this today and you feel like anything of what I said is a part of you, something you've been through your life, sitting there hating yourself, whether it's at home, in a treatment center, in a relationship, or a job, just know that you can take the power back and create this incredible life for yourself if you try out the self-love thing, no matter what it looks like. If you try to go to a yoga class you've never done, if you try to pick up that book, if you try to, even make that first attempt towards changing the language you have toward yourself, I promise it's worth it. Sometimes in the beginning it might feel like BS, or it might feel like it's not getting you anywhere. The only reason why I'm even sitting here in this chair is talking to you today is because I never gave up on trying to establish real self-worth that didn't come from outside sources, because the only thing that matters is how you feel about you. All love starts with self-love.
Awesome. All right, so the last question that I have for you, Christina, is what sets your soul on fire?
Let's see, what sets my soul on fire? I'm a pretty passionate person. I just love having fun when we're talking about honest conversation. It doesn't have to even be on eating disorders or mental health, because that is something I'm passionate about. But when I can actually look someone in the eyes and we can talk for hours about all different things, share about our life experiences. And what sets my soul on fire too is allowing life to be random and spontaneous, allowing conversations to go where they're gonna go, allowing whatever activity I'm gonna do later be random, maybe go try something new I've never done, go to this new spot that has art. I'm a big art person. Just going on these adventures and allowing life to unfold in a magical way that couldn't have happened if I was in control. Just surrendering to the beauty that's around me and not really thinking about going anywhere necessarily, but being just open to whatever comes up next and whatever sounds like a lot of fun and sounds healthy and something where I can really connect with another person in the moment is fun for me also.
So, before I kind of wrap things up here, Christina, I want you just to kind of share with the listeners just one more time, when is Body Mantra? Where can people find the tickets to purchase them, things like that? If they're interested in maybe sponsoring Body Mantra or a future event, where can they go? How can people follow you on social media? Just kind of share some of that stuff, please.
Yes, so Body Mantra, my day event that I'm hosting at the Native Hotel, is on February 1st from 1 to 5 p.m. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, and there are a couple different options on there. And as far as events go for the summer, I'm looking to launch a second Body Mantra in June or July. You can find out more information about how to sponsor those or how to get involved as a public speaker or a fitness professional on my website, which is www.mybodymantra.com. Again, mybodymantra.com. And my Instagram account, where you can contact me directly, is Christina Marie's Mantra. Again, Christina Marie's Mantra. I love to repeat. It's easy to forget stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So, Christina, I just want to thank you for sharing your story, and I want to just acknowledge you. And I kind of shared this with you yesterday, but I just want to acknowledge you on the podcast that you're very well spoken. You do a great job of sharing your story. You do a great job of expounding on things. You definitely have just a great voice, and I really want to acknowledge you on that, and just encourage you to just continue to be you, and just continue to share your message, because I know the message that you're sharing in regards to body positivity, self-love, and just really just kind of that message of your personal story, that's going to impact thousands and thousands of people. So just continue doing what you're doing, okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you for your listening years. I want to thank you for hanging out with Christina and myself on the 127 Fit podcast. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing on to the podcast, or myself personally, you can find more of that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be great. If you are just looking for some help in regards to your fitness life, your fitness journey, I would love to set up a free 30-minute fitness call with you. If you just kind of want to talk about fitness, if you want to talk about nutrition, if you want to talk about mindset, anything health, wellness, and you're just really looking for somebody to kind of help you out in regards to all of those things, please just send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram, and we will connect. We'll talk about just kind of like what you want to focus on in regards to your health and fitness for this new year. And then if you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can send me an email or give this email out one more time, 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, I would ask you another huge favor and take that specific episode or episodes and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.